Police officers. What incident will traumatize you for the rest of your life? We got a call about a woman who had locked herself in her bathroom, saying her boyfriend was trying to kill her. What we ended up finding was so much worse. My partner, Mason, and I arrived at a house on the end of a street. The lampposts flickered yellow, and the wind danced the trees and bushes. The clouds were thick and the air ice cold. We took position at the front door. We knocked. Police. Open up. Only the sound of wind chimes. Mason kicked the door open with all the force he could muster. We scanned the house downstairs. No one in sight. Clear. You hear that? I said. Mason looked up at the stairs. Gentle cries. A woman, so subtle and as if muffled behind a door in a room, thought she was supposed to be downstairs, said Mason. We made our way upstairs. Ma'am, it's okay, I began. You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you. The crying stopped abruptly, as if someone hit pause. Then it started again. But he's still here, replied the woman from inside the bedroom. My partner and I checked the entire house. No one's here, ma'am. You're safe. Downstairs, the front door slammed shut. My partner and I gave each other a gaze, and I could notice his brow sweating despite the cold night. I used my head to gesture for him to take a look. He stood from atop the stairs and looked down at the front door. If only we'd known then what was about to happen. Just the wind, I think, he said. Then a gentle voice came from inside the bathroom. Are you sure, Officer Bradley? The woman asked. The entire night at that scene, neither my partner Mason nor I used our names out loud. Not once. How could she have known our names? Ma'am, do you need help or not? Mason was agitated. We need to know you're okay. So step back because I'm kicking it in. A part of me believes Mason was more eager to see the woman's face, to find out who she was and how she knew what she did. Then he was for her safety. He wanted peace of mind. No, hold on, I said. She might be sitting right by the door. We don't want to hurt her. Then she said it. Officer Bradley, tell Mason that if he touches this door, I will visit his family in the late hours of a certain night and break down a door of my own. The woman's voice was an octave deeper when she said that. I never understood the expression, white as a ghost. Do people actually turn that pale in the face? I learned that they in fact did. When I saw my partner react to those sinister words, I couldn't stop him from kicking in that bedroom door this time. But when he did, we found nobody inside. There wasn't a window above the shower through which to escape or another door to go through. And yet we were certain that we just had a full conversation with a woman behind this door. We scanned the entire house, including the backyard, one last time, inch by inch. Nothing. When it was time to leave, we gave each other a look and left the house without even looking back. Now, this is the part of the story I haven't told anyone. It's just too disturbing to even comprehend. I didn't even tell Mason. We were sufficiently shaken up, so I didn't want to tell him this when we left the house. I drove us back to the station that night. He probably thought I didn't notice, but his hands were shaking too much to drive comfortably. He doesn't drink coffee. As I reversed the cruiser out the street, Mason didn't look back at the house. But the truth is I did, and I sincerely wish that I hadn't. I looked and squinted at a garbage can by the side of the house to see a strange dark figure kneeling by the gate as if watching us leave. And as we finally drove away, as the house became more and more distant in our mirror, the figure slowly stood itself up. And I'll swear, even today, that as it stood up, it didn't stop rising until its head peeked over the roof of that two-story house. As we drove back to the station, the woman's words kept echoing in my mind like a cursed tape. I'll visit your family on some late night. I had never heard such a sinister threat, but what disturbed me most was her tone. It wasn't a boast or an outburst of anger. It was as if she was stating something inevitable, something she had already decided would happen. Mason sat silently in the passenger seat, his hands still trembling in his lap. He stared straight ahead, but his eyes were distant, as if he were seeing something I couldn't. The silence in the car was oppressive. All I could hear was my own breathing and the low hum of the engine. I decided to break the silence. Mason, do you think that was real? He took a long time to respond, as if he needed to carefully choose his words. I don't know, but how did she know our names? He slowly turned his head toward me, his eyes wide and his breathing heavy. Bradley, no one knew we were there. Not even dispatch had our names. My heart raced. He was right. The call was anonymous, and we were simply responding to an address. There was no exchange of information that could explain her knowing who we were. We arrived at the station, but the unease didn't subside at all. I parked the car and shut off the engine, but neither of us made a move to get out. We sat in silence, each of us trying to process what had happened. After a few minutes, Mason broke the silence. Did you see anything out there? Before we left, my heart skipped a beat. Why are you asking that? He hesitated, and I could tell he was struggling to find the right words. Because I think I saw something, a shadow, too big to be a person. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. It couldn't be possible that he had seen the same thing I did. Mason, when we were leaving, I looked back. I saw something too, something by the side of the house. It looked like it was watching us. He turned to look at me, pale as a ghost. And then I took a deep breath, and then it stood up, and it kept rising until its head was above the roof. Mason was silent, but the way he looked away confirmed what I feared. He had seen the same thing. That night, neither of us could sleep. I spent hours replaying the events in my mind, trying to find a rational explanation, but there was none. The next day, Mason requested a transfer to another department. He claimed he needed something less stressful, but I knew the truth. That night had broken him in a way he would never admit. I, on the other hand, couldn't just leave it behind. Something inside me needed answers. So at the end of my shift, I did what was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done. I went back to that house. It was even more terrifying in daylight. The windows were covered with dark curtains, and there was an aura of abandonment I hadn't noticed before. Still, something called to me like an invisible force pulling me forward. The front door was ajar, exactly as we'd left it. I stepped inside with my gun drawn, trying to ignore the feeling that I was being watched. The house was silent, but something was different. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating. I climbed the stairs slowly, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the emptiness. When I reached the top, I approached the room where it had all happened. The door was closed, but something was written on it that hadn't been there before. You came back. My heart pounded in my chest. The writing looked fresh, made with something that resembled black ink. But the smell, it wasn't ink. It was something metallic, something that made me shiver. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open, but this time it gave way without resistance. The room was empty, just as before. No sign of the woman, no obvious escape route. And yet, I knew I wasn't alone. Suddenly, a chill ran down my spine. Something was behind me. I turned quickly, aiming my gun, but there was nothing there. Just the empty hallway. Then I heard it, a low, almost imperceptible laugh that seemed to come from all directions at once. You're curious, aren't you, Officer Bradley? Her voice. But there was no one there. I looked around, trying to pinpoint the source of the sound, but it was useless. Why did you come back? Looking for answers? Her voice was closer now, as if whispering in my ear. Some questions aren't meant to be asked. Who are you? What do you want? My voice trembled, but I needed to know. The laughter stopped, and for a moment, the silence was absolute. Then she replied, I'm just the beginning. Before I could react, I felt a pressure on my chest like someone was shoving me. I was thrown backward, slamming into the wall with such force that I lost my breath. When I regained my senses, I was on the ground floor, lying on the living room floor. The front door was wide open, and the cold wind blew in, bringing with it the sound of the wind chimes outside. I got up with difficulty, feeling a sharp pain in my back, and left the house without looking back. As I drove back to the station, something in the rearview mirror caught my attention. The house grew smaller and smaller in the distance, but on the second floor, in one of the windows, I saw the silhouette of a woman staring directly at me. And then she waved. This time, I knew this was only the beginning. And as much as I wanted to walk away, something told me this story was far from over. As soon as I left that house, the cold night air wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket. My heart was still pounding, and the weight on my chest wasn't just physical. It was something I couldn't explain. When I got into the patrol car, I slammed the door shut so hard it echoed through the deserted street. My hands trembled as I tried to start the engine, but my mind was somewhere else, torn between the overwhelming urge to flee and the gnawing curiosity to understand what had just happened. I drove away without looking in the rearview mirror. I had learned my lesson. I didn't want to see anything else. The wind howled around the car, and the headlights cut through the darkness, but it felt like the night itself was chasing me. The feeling of being watched didn't leave until I parked in front of the station. When I stepped out of the car, the sense of safety I expected didn't come. The building, which had always been a place of refuge, now felt utterly inadequate against whatever was in that house. I rushed to the front desk and headed straight for my desk. Mason wasn't there. He had either gone home or was trying to bury that night in sleep or a bottle. Anything to escape what we had faced. I, on the other hand, couldn't ignore it. I needed answers. I logged onto the department computer and began searching for the address of the house. It didn't take long to find its dark history. Over the years, there had been reports of screams, unexplained lights, and even missing persons. In the 1980s, a family living there was found dead under mysterious circumstances. The case had been closed as a murder-suicide, but the details were too strange to be easily explained. There were also stories of people who had moved into the house, only to develop signs of schizophrenia within months. I slammed the computer shut, as if that would stop the growing dread inside me. But it was impossible to shake. I knew I needed to talk about it with someone. The next day, I shared what had happened with a few colleagues at the station. I hoped for support, or at the very least, to find someone who had experienced something similar. Instead, I was met with laughter. "You actually went there? You've got to be kidding," one officer said, laughing in disbelief. Another, more serious, shook his head and looked at me like I was insane. Everyone knows that place is cursed. Schizophrenia? Maybe, but some people swear it's possession. Possession? The word sent chills down my spine. It sounded like an exaggeration, but nothing about that night made sense. "You know, they say anyone who goes in there comes out cursed, right?" Another officer added, half-jokingly. "Maybe it's just a legend, but if I were you, I wouldn't go back." Despite their teasing tone, there was something in their eyes, something that hinted they might believe more than they let on. Maybe they were just messing with me, but there was a kernel of unease in their voices. I laughed nervously, trying to play it off. "You guys are messing with me, right? This is just some rookie hazing." But deep down, I knew it wasn't just that. In the weeks that followed, I tried to return to my routine, but it was impossible. Every time night fell, I felt like I was being watched. Not on the street, not at the station, but at home, in the silence of my own room. Every time I looked at a window or passed by a mirror, I expected to see something in the reflection, something that, thankfully, never appeared. But the fear was there, always. I never went back to that house. I avoided even driving down the street it was on. If there was a curse, as my colleague suggested, I didn't want to test it. Months later, there was another call to the same house. A neighbor reported hearing screams coming from inside. The moment the dispatch came over the radio, my heart raced, and I immediately made up an excuse. I told them I was busy with another case and let another team respond. The officers who went found nothing but an empty, silent house. No sign of the caller, no noises or movement. Just the same abandoned place as always. When they came back, they made sure to tease me. "You missed it, Bradley. Your ghost lady didn't show up to say hi." I laughed along with them, but inside, every word felt like a knife. Whatever was in that house, I knew it was real. It wasn't my imagination or some psychological suggestion. It was something that defied logic, something that seemed to be waiting, watching. To this day, I don't know if my colleagues were just messing with me or if they knew more about that house than they were willing to admit. I never spoke to Mason about it again. He avoided the subject as much as I did. What I do know is that I never saw that woman again. I never heard her voice or felt her presence. But sometimes at night, I still get the feeling that something is there, lurking in the shadows, waiting. And every time I think about that house, a chill runs down my spine. Because deep down, I know that if I ever go back, she'll be waiting for me.